All right, I think we'll get started. I'm going to turn it over to CS Wright. They are the board president of Adoptees United, and they'll introduce our moderator, who's also a board member, and we'll go from there. Thanks, CS.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. If you're new here, welcome. Just wanted to lay out a couple some housekeeping things so everyone is aware and we're all on the same page here. First, I just want to introduce us. We are Adoptees United. We are a nonprofit that is seeking to support and uplift all adoptees, both domestically and internationally. Just a reminder that this is a space for adoptees, where we center adoptees and adoptee voices. And we welcome our adoptee allies, adoptee parents, and supporters and friends who are also here. But just want to remind you all that this is a space that we are uplifting our adoptee voices today. I'm really excited for today's chat. We have some of our podcasting friends here from Adoptees Crossing Lines, and Erica Babineau, our board member, is going to be moderating that conversation today. So I am going to kick it off to Erica so she can do some introductions. And thanks so much for being here again, folks.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, it is good to see some new faces in here. So we're so excited today to have Adoptees Crossing Lines. I'm gonna steal a line from Dr. Noel. Hey y'all, which I literally love. When I hear that, it just excites me, because I know I'm getting ready to hear some great things about adoptees and the feelings about adoptees. So I would love for each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us as much or as little about yourself, and just about your adoptee journey. Who wants to start? Leah, Tasha, Noel?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. My name is Tasha. Thank you all for being here. I'm a fast talker, especially when I'm nervous, and I'm nervous right now. So I'll get through. But my adoptee journey is what I call an ongoing journey. I'll work backwards. I'm in reunion right now. I started my search. Well, it's been a lifetime of a search. I got most of my information in 2019. Prior to that, I was just, going on blogs and websites and chat rooms trying to find information. I'm a same race adoptee who was adopted at birth. Leah, no?
Hey y'all. I'm Dr. Noelle Chaddick, and I am a transracial adoptee. I was adopted at 4 months of age. I was born in El Paso, Texas. And as Tasha said, it's been a lifelong search. I am in reunion. I found my biological father's family 3 years ago and found my biological mother 2 years ago. We talk every day, so the connection is good. The trauma is real.
I hear that.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leah. I'm super nervous. Thanks, everyone, for coming and being here today. I am a same race adoptee. I also spent time in foster care before I was adopted. I am in reunion with siblings and like cousins and things like that. Both of my bio parents passed away, so no reunion with them, but grateful to be able to like find my siblings and things like that, and excited for this conversation.
Great. We're so glad, so happy to have you. I feel such kinship. I'm a same race adoptee as well. We are so looking forward to hearing some things about you. How did you all come together? How did you decide we're going to do I know people talk about it all the time, right? I'm going to do a podcast. You actually did it. Who started it? How did you all get together? How did you come together?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Twitter, and I stumbled across like adoptee Twitter one day, and then I just tweeted like, hey, like I think it was in April, like, what adoptee wants to start a podcast with me, kind of like halfway kidding. Didn't really think I would get a lot of responses. And then people started responding and DMing me. And so I just started reaching back out to folks and like having conversations with them and seeing like who I felt like would be a good fit and like sharing like my vision and like kind of what I wanted for the show, and ultimately landed on Tasha and Noelle.
And I'll say I'm pretty active on Twitter as well. Once I found the adoptee side of Twitter, that was like my home where I pour my heart and soul, probably too much sometimes. And I saw Leah's post and I jumped right on it. And was I ready at the time? Probably not, but we got ourselves ready and it's become this wonderful, therapeutic, beautiful thing. I look forward to all of our meetings. I look forward to all of our podcast episodes. It's helped my journey so much and it's so rewarding getting all the feedback and getting to this point, and we hope to continue to keep growing.
Not dissimilar. I spend a lot of time on adoptee Twitter. It is a safe haven for me. And I saw Leah's tweet and immediately was like, oh yes, absolutely. I had been blogging, so I have an adoptee blog. But I thought a podcast was a way to reach a larger audience. And it has been so incredibly therapeutic spending time with Tasha and Leah and getting to talk through this every other week or so.
That's wonderful. I have to ask Leah, what was it about Tasha and Noelle that you said, this is the right fit? Like the three of us can make this work.
I don't know. Whenever I had conversations with both of them, they both were like incredibly transparent about their stories and their journeys. And I knew that with this podcast, I didn't want it to be like some cute little show. Like I wanted it to be honest. And so I was looking for folks who, have already come out of the fog and weren't afraid to tell the stories that they've experienced and perhaps step on some toes and things like that. And so, whenever I spoke with them, it just felt like a good vibe. And so.
Thank you for saying that in the part about the fog. So I'm going to look over here and glance at this because I want to read the description. If some of you have not seen the description or read the description of their podcast, we are three people with three very different experiences of being adopted. In this podcast, we deconstruct the romanticism holding up the adoption industry and expose the lies, abuse, and pain that gets silenced. I'm telling you, I had to throw my hands up on that. That is the truth. We're here to unwrap the shiny bow around adoption and speak our truths as adoptees. And in doing so, we explain what it means and what it feels like, as Leah just said, to come out of the fog. This isn't your feel-good podcast. We are angry, healing, and honest adoptees. That touched me so much when I read that because so many times we get the shiny bow, right? So, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call today can relate to that description. Would y'all talk about just your experience of coming out of the fog? What does it mean to you? And how did you come, if you're out of the fog, how did you come out of that fog? Because there might be people here who are still in the fog.
So right around the time I got involved with adoptee Twitter, I started to be able to put language. Being on adoptee Twitter helped me put language to the realities that I had a significant and bad experience being adopted. It's something that I always knew, but I didn't know I could talk about. And so here was an entire community full of people who were talking about how badly they have been treated. And for me, the first step out of the fog was to throw down my sense of needing to be grateful. I'm not grateful for the abuse I suffered. I'm not grateful for being separated from my biological family. I am not grateful for any of the experiences that I had growing up and a lot of the experiences that I've had as an adult.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
I would say from my experience, coming out of the fog really started happening once I understood that adoption was trauma. I was in therapy at the time for something else and I had gotten rid of everything else and that was still there. And I was like, why am I still feeling this way? So at first, I was someone who was grateful. I drank the juice that was given to me, and I believe adoption was this great thing. I had no idea that the deep feelings of the void and feeling out of place and feeling the disconnections from anybody, I didn't know that was associated to adoption and adoption trauma. And then once I also got onto Twitter and reading other people's thoughts and everything, I'm like, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. So coming out of the fog is just realizing that it's basically taking off those rose-colored glasses for the most part is how I kind of define coming out of it. And once you're out, there's no going back.
That's true. That is true. You said you drank the juice, huh?
I did. They fed it to me. I was even given a book called God Chose You and You Are Special and You're the One, and we only wanted one child and to give her everything, and we chose you, and when we saw you, you looked at us, and yeah, all of that.
I don't know how many times many of us have heard that. You were chosen. You are special. Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leah,
Yeah, so for me, coming out of the fog, I would say it happened over the last 2 to 3 years. When the pandemic first started, I was like looking for spaces that were adoptee centered, and I found that a lot of spaces were for like adoptive parents or like foster parents. Like it was really hard to find like a space where I could exist and meet other adoptees. And I ended up, finding some on Facebook and then eventually landed on Twitter. But I think for me, I just got to this point where I was just like, I've been fed all this stuff about that I should be grateful for my experience and things like that. But when I really took the time to think about it, it was like, why am I grateful that I was separated from my family, that you're willing to give this money to these strangers to be able to take care of me when you could give that money to like bio families and we could have, family preservation and things like that. And then also just like some of the abuse that I endured with my adoptive family, it was just really hard to be thankful or grateful or just see adoption as this beautiful thing, or this better situation that is often portrayed or preached because my situation, it wasn't better. So yeah, that was kind of my experience.
thanks, Leah. And I want to later come back to the grateful and the family preservation talk for sure, because I can't tell you, I'm sure there's so many adoptees on this call who have heard about being grateful. And those of us who have wondered why is it that there's not a lot on family preservation and a lot more emphasis on adoption. So if you don't mind, if as little or as much as you want to share, what was it like just growing up as an adoptee in your house? And, whether it was, if there was trauma, we don't have to talk about it, but just what was it like? And what got you on that path to where you thought, I need to find some answers?
So as I said, I'm a transracial adoptee. And so for me, it was all about my Blackness and being Black and being the right kind of Black. We were talking about this in our last episode, actually. So I was constantly being erased, both my adoptive status in the household. We were supposed to pretend like I wasn't adopted, and we would not talk about my adoption, and I couldn't get any information about my adoption. But also the ways in which I was being told that Black people were bad and that I did not want to be one of those people. And the messaging was hot and heavy. In our last episode, I talked about a book that my adoptive mother got me about Black people, and it was filled with starving children in Africa and, the projects in Chicago and Black people standing on street corners. And it was a warning, right? And the constant, don't be too loud. I can remember her telling me, I had to be 6 or 7, I was in first grade, her telling me that I needed to not be scary. I needed to not scare other people, that my body was scary. So growing up in that household was difficult at best, on top of a lot of physical abuse, verbal, emotional, and physical abuse. Just the ways in which who I was dissatisfying to her in every possible way. And my adoptive father had left the family when I was 3, so there was no protection whatsoever, and no one was paying attention. When I went to school without lunch money, no one thought to address that because this nice lady, this nice white lady had adopted this little black girl. And so there couldn't have been any problems.
This nice white lady. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Oh, I'm sorry, thought I turned that off. Sorry about that. Thanks for sharing that. Tasha or Leah, would you like to talk about that as well?
Sure. So I grew up as an only child. I do have siblings though. I have a brother ahead of me and sisters below me. But in my household, I grew up as an only child. They told me very early, I can't remember, between the ages of like 6 and 8. So growing up, they told me, but I didn't know what it meant other than they chose me. So for me, I internalized the idea of being perfect. And I thought, since you got me, I could go back to wherever that was. So I grew up with a lot of pressure on myself to be the best student, the best daughter, the best athlete, up late, just trying to prove, just in fear. I was legit scared if I messed up, they would take me back. So that was a little crippling at times. And then as I got a little bit older, it came more obvious. Even though I'm same race, I don't really look like them. So, you hear the whispers and people asking questions and having to deal with that. And then as far as, outside of the household, visiting family, it's like, who knows? Who doesn't know? Who accepts me as their cousin? Things like that. And then as I got even older, it was just rough, just all the rumors that fly around, not knowing who is an ally, who is not. So it was kind of rough growing up that way. And I dealt with a lot of it on my own. Because I was scared of being sent back, I didn't have a lot of questions for them, didn't bring a lot of things up. Even though my dad is also adopted, I didn't go there with it. I just kind of internalized everything. And then I was a wreck. And through therapy, got through that. But living there, I have to say, that's why I was in the fog for so long. I did have a good childhood. It was just those moments of feeling very alone, very isolated, making up stories about myself because I didn't have a past, so I can make it up. So I lived in La La Land half the time, convinced people I was an alien, just all types of stuff because I was coping as a child and didn't truly understood what it meant and why I wasn't with my brother and my sisters.
You said so much that I feel is probably resonating with a lot of people here. I can't see a lot of faces, but just a head nod or a thumbs up. How many of you in this room felt like they had to deal with things on their own because they didn't have anybody to talk with? Yeah. I had a brother who was adopted. My mother's 2 best friends, kids, my cousins. I have like 4 cousins. We all came from the New York Foundling, but nobody talked about it. Mm-hmm. So everybody just dealt with it on their own. And when you said you make it up, how many of you in the room felt like you just made up a story about who you were? Yeah, Diane Carroll was my birth mother. Yeah, if any of you of a certain age would know who she is. Yeah. And Sidney Poitier was my birth father. So yeah, we just had to make things up. So thanks for sharing that, because I'm sure that's things that a lot of people, that resonates with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Leah, you want to add to this? Love to hear.
I can add to it. I had a pretty rough childhood. My adoptive parents also had like a biological child. And so for me, I felt like she was kind of like favored a lot. So that was really hard for me. I felt like I was always in competition with my sister. And then for me, like I always knew that I was adopted. And then I always knew that my bio mom died, but I didn't really know anything about like my bio dad. So that's where a lot of my fantasies came from. I was like, oh, like he just doesn't know that, you know, I'm out here. Like, I'm sure he has like a really great life. And like one day he's gonna come like find me and like rescue me. And like that was kind of how I like coped with a lot of it. But I dealt with a lot of abuse in my childhood, specifically sexual abuse from my adoptive mom's dad. And so like that was like really tough for me because it kind of felt like after my family found out about that, I suddenly became like the black sheep of the family. And then that was hard for me too, because I was already dealing with the fact that I was like adopted. And so I'm like, did this happen to me? Like, because I'm adopted, I'm different, like trying to like cope with that and just like the way that it was handled. And like, I wasn't supported through it. Like I had to deal with all of that trauma on my own because my adoptive parents, like, quite frankly, didn't give a fuck. So yeah, I was just out here trying to survive. And I think like eventually when I got older, I got tired of like, my parents were very religious. And so like a lot of people knew them like through the church and like the work that they did. And they were both educators. And so they were revered as good people, but it was like behind closed doors, they were totally different people than who they portrayed. And so everybody thought that I had this really like beautiful life and things were so great. And like, don't get me wrong, like I had, you know, there was food on the table and clothes on my back, but like from an emotional standpoint, like my adoptive parents like were not there for me. They were really focused on the bio child that they always wanted, that they eventually got. So
Erica, I just, some of the comments are fun to see. Like I think Noelle, was it Noelle?
Yeah,
Who
Diana
believed
Ross.
Diana Ross was her mom. So, and Amy thought that Jacques Pepin and Sophia Loren were hers. And also that a number of us have said in chat that we would lie for no good reason, which I never really understood as a kid why I did that. But apparently CS says that they're feel really seen in this space, being one of the liars in the Liars Club, I guess, which is actually the Liars Club, I think, is a book about adoption by Mary. I forget who wrote it, but just from the comments.
Wow, like I was today, this moment, years old, when I realized about the line. I did not, I did the same thing. And like at this moment, I'm like, oh my gosh, other people did it too. This is.
Yeah, our whole life was based on a lie. So many of us actually just did it and didn't realize what was going on. It was natural.
Yeah,
I
just
need to
make
sit on this later and think about this a little deeper about the whole lying thing. This is wild to me. Kind of cool, like in a weird way.
Same. I didn't realize, just like you, Erica, that I just thought it was just a quirk of my personality, but maybe not.
I lied to hide the bad stuff, right? I lied to hide the abuse. I lied up, I like to say. I would make up whole family vacations that I went on and trips to the mall. And I would actually lie to my classmates and tell them that I was at the party. They just don't remember. I was there, but you were so drunk, you don't remember me being there. So I lied to make it better.
to make it better. Wow.
I wonder if adoptees are disproportionately con artists as well, and good at it too. So I don't know.
Part of it is that we had to make up what we didn't know, you know, because so many, I don't know how many of you, you know, in school had to do, you know, like trace your family history, that kind of traumatic stuff that they had us doing.
Mhm.
Exactly. So you don't want to feel left out, especially as a young person. Wow. Yeah, some great comments in here. Thanks for keeping up with that, Greg. You know, since we're still talking about the fog, you know, about coming out of the fog, I'd be curious to know, how do you react or feel when you find that, like, if you're in a conversation with someone, with an adoptee, right? And you're talking to them and you're like, wow, they're still in the fog. They're like, oh my gosh. And I've talked to people like that. I'm so grateful and I'm so happy that I had blah, blah, blah. And you just, I don't know. How do you feel when you're talking with people like that, when you know some of their story and you're kind of shocked that they're still in the fog?
I find it really hard to do. I find it really challenging to engage with folks who are still in the fog because I'm so far out of it that I just feel like it's impossible to like have a conversation because you're incredibly grateful and I'm like, fuck adoption, like it like, so I just feel like I can't do it. I tend to just align better with folks who have come out of the fog and don't have on the rose colored glasses, as Tasha mentioned. Yeah.
I hear you. I hear you.
Is
And
that
I
was that one of
actually-
your bumper stickers, Aaliyah's fuck adoption?
Fuck adoption. What did I t-shirt?
Yes.
Wow. Anybody else want to talk about that? Like if you get in a conversation, how do you feel when somebody they're like excited about it?
Well, I haven't talked to other adoptees since coming out of the fog who were still in the fog. There might be a reason for that. I have talked to people thinking about adopting, and with me being out the fog, they wanted my honest opinion, so I gave it. But I would also have a hard time, I think. So maybe I need to prepare myself for those conversations because they're in that space, and I don't want to. You got to be careful with that. You know, I came out on my own, you know, behind closed doors on a laptop type situation. So I don't know how it'd be to help someone to come out of it if they want to, or, you know, they might have that block and that could be could turn into a negative situation. So I'm not sure how I'll be able to handle that, to be honest with you.
I file this in the category of that is not my job. I have adoptees who regularly will write on, you know, my posts and say, well, not all adoptees have had that experience, right? And I just let it go. It's not my job. The information is there for them to digest. They have to deal with their own lives. They have to figure out where they're going and what they're doing. It's not my job.
Fuck adoption. It's not my job.
Well said.
That's it. I love it. I love it. Tasha, what do you say when people contact, you know, people you know, or somebody's adopting? What do you say to them?
Well, they kind of lead on that path because one lady was like, you know, I would hate if they grew up and said, you're not my real mom. I'm like, hard stop right there then. Like, you are not prepared. If that's your biggest concern right there, you're not even close. So I just kind of give it to them straight because I've always been an open book, probably like I said before, probably overshare. So if you're coming to me and you know me, I'm going to give it to you pretty raw. So that's pretty much how I do with it. I just tell how it is. And I let them know that it could be traumatic. It's not a one and done conversation. You might need to check up on them. And if you want to have the illusion or the con of this family, then you have to be prepared for those tough conversations.
I think that's great. And it is not a one and done. And for adoptive parent, people who are adopting, and I usually say to them, don't say that your adoptee can talk to you about anything and be open, but you're really not.
Right.
That's how I grew up, where, you know, it really wasn't a conversation anybody wanted to have, no matter how they said they wanted to be open. So, yeah. And I know we're kind of skipping around, but, you know, I wanted to ask you again, Tasha, I wanted to ask you I'd love to know a little more about how your adoptive father was an adoptee as well, right? You two never talked about it?
Oh no, I did, because he was actually he came to me. He's actually he's very proud and a little envious. That's how far I got with my search. Oh. He doesn't have the information. He was a little bit older. He was adopted at birth. And it was a situation where it was family at first, and then it wasn't. He kind of got switched around and things of that nature. So there may be one living person who may know, but he's nervous. I said, just ask. So it helps with that a little bit, him being adopted, but it's two totally different situations. And I never pressed him on why he chose to adopt. I know where it came from her wanting to So I kind of leave it alone. We don't go too far into like, he doesn't share some of the internal traumas that I have. So we only go but so far with those conversations. And then whatever I tell him, he'll tell her. And as you said, she's like, I'll talk, but it's kind of hard. It hurts her. So I just kind of like to leave it alone. And maybe one day I'll have, like, my therapist suggested I have a conversation with her. I'm not sure if it's worth it. Like, I'm okay with her living in her world.
Sometimes that we just have to let it go.
Yep.
And deal with it with ourselves, our therapist, and in a room like this with a bunch of people who understand what we're talking about.
Exactly.
There
Because
was a
they don't do it
comment-
with any ill will. It wasn't, she didn't do it for any ill will intent. You know,
Right.
she wanted to have a child. So I just, she knows that I struggle. She knows I've been in therapy. So
Yeah. Well, we're halfway through this, and someone wrote, "You all are so refreshing. Part of me can finally relax with your honesty." I'm just gonna let that sit for just a second, because that's why we're here. That's I would assume that's part of why you did this podcast, right? So that adoptees can relax and be honest and be open. And I don't know, I heard one of you say, I think it was you, Tasha, said you're an open book.
Mhm.
Do Leah, Noel, do you feel like that too when people talk to you about your adoption experience? Besides the podcast, obviously makes you an open book. But before you did the podcast, were you like an open book with people?
So I am openly willing to talk about adoption. I talk about it all the time, but I will say that I have deep, deep hidden secrets that I tell no one. Leah and Tasha don't even know about it. I just have never, I don't know, there's a space inside of me where I keep my darkest secrets, which probably keeps me able to engage around adoption and being an adoptee, because I'm not coming from that place of deep hurt and pain. I have so much respect for Leah, who is so much braver than I am, and has been so incredibly open with her pain and her trauma. She is my superhero. So
That's wonderful. You must, I saw that big smile from Leah. Yeah. Thank you for that. I see, Noel, you wrote, I write adopted on all family history forms and leave it at that. Yeah. I understand that. That used to be for me very frustrating. I would get angry because I had to write that across the paper. And the last time I wrote it, I found my birth mother the next day. So one thing that you talked about on your podcast was also being aware that within your audience, I'm just trying to read this question. Well, I can't really understand the question.
I know which one you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, this came up it's in your podcast actually, and it came up I think when we met before the show, and that I'm interested in it as we do a podcast as well, and in your audience are members of your biological family. There may be members of your adoptive family in that audience, and I'm wondering how you approach that when you're talking about things that are really personal, and there may also be people that are impacted by what you say, and whether you hold back or you said fuck adoption, I'm going forward. Yeah.
See, Tasha had that smile on her face.
well, that was my struggle. So my inner circle, my friends know it. My parents do not. I'm type, like I said, they don't even know about the podcast. They don't know about this panel tonight, none of that. If they were to find out, I'm fine with that. And even my family finds out, I'm fine with that. My biological family, I know this is public, but I haven't presented it because this is still part of my journey. If they stumble on this right now, then we'll take it from there. But I do not hold back. I was at first, and I'm like, no, this is for me. Holding them back is still upholding the adoption industry, and I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of adoptees do that. We hold it back, we hold in because we are so nervous and afraid of hurting the feelings of our adoptive parents or our adopted siblings or whoever else we might feel like we're going to hurt. So it must feel really good to not hold that in. Yeah. Amy wrote, thought my reunion would make me unadopted. Nope, life sentence. How did you feel after your reunion? If you were reunited, how did you feel personally about it?
So I feel abandoned. I feel like my biological family simply do not understand what they did to me. You know, they're a affluent Black family. They have generations of family. They're very proud of how many generations of their family are still alive. And I look around that room and I want to know why nobody took me, why nobody kept me, why nobody helped her keep me. Why was I just given away? And they act very excited and they tell me how much they love me. And I just want to know why they didn't take care of me. I have an aunt who is 9 months older than me that I could have been raised with. My grandmother brags about having raised my cousin. I want to know why these people gave me away and did not want to keep me.
And you didn't get those answers.
So interestingly enough, I haven't asked the question. The only person I ever talk about this with, she's on here. My partner, Casey, is on here somewhere. The only person I ever talk about this with is Casey. That's my safe place. I don't feel safe enough to ask the question. I don't feel confident enough that if I ask the question, I can do it without raging, fierce anger. And I worry that it'll close the door permanently.
We hear you. We hear you. Some of those things we just don't talk about, I guess, right?
Yeah, so for my reunion, I felt a sense of, I guess there's two sides of it. Part of me felt a huge sense of belonging when I found my bio siblings on my dad's side. Those were the first of my family that I met. And my brother had like this big cookout and invited, like, this is my sister. Like, he was just so excited and was like introducing me to everybody. And I just felt really at home. I felt really welcomed. And I think part of that is like because of my childhood with my adopted family, I always felt like the Black sheep and I just endured so much. I just never felt like I had a place within that family. So I felt a lot of joy when I found them. But when it got to my mom's side, I think similar to Noelle, I think there was some level of like anger because my two older siblings were raised by our grandparents. And so they had like more time with like my mom and things like that. And like the rest of us went into the system and all went our separate ways. So I think that was really challenging. Like, why did you not take like the rest of us? Why just those two? And I'm like the baby within my within my bio family. So yeah, I think I experienced like both things, but I am happy that I was able to connect and meet them because I learned a lot more. Like, I got to see pictures. I learned that my mom was also adopted. So like a generational thing, and just got to hear like lots of stories, even though like my mom is no longer here. I got to hear a lot of stories. And I guess too, with my dad's side, there was some anger too, because my dad raised my brother and my sister. And so I'm like, okay, like, you raised them, like nobody could like take me in. Nobody cared enough to, y'all just left me out here. All right, that's cool. So yeah, that's a lot of what I felt.
Wow. Yeah, there are a lot of adoptees I talk with, and they don't understand why other people were kept. or there were so many other relatives. And I will say this, in the Black community, adoption, especially, and I'm dating myself because I'm way older than you all are, but back then, and even, you know, later into the 70s and 80s, that's just something that people would say, you're Black and adopted. Black people don't give up their kids. You know, they take in my adopted family, my grandmother took in all kinds of people, all, you know, people who needed a home, people who had kids. That's something that just was very different for Black families. So yeah. I wanted to show, Annette said in my reunion, such that it actually made me feel more adopted. And Tina said, I am in reunion and rejection. So this is something that I can tell a lot of people are resonating with what you're talking about. Earlier we talked about, I think it was Leah who talked about family preservation. What do you think? What are your thoughts about, just in general, adoption industry?
That's a big question. Yeah.
Talk as long as you want, because
Yeah, I just think that the resources and the money that are given to like foster families, the tax breaks that are given to businesses, all of these different things, I think that that money should be directed to the bio families, because if the adoption or if the child welfare industry is truly about the child, then why are we in the business of like separating folks, you know? And like foster care was never designed to be a place to adopt from. It was supposed to be a temporary solution for, you know, an emergency situation or whatever the case may be. And the goal is supposed to be reunification, but it has gotten so far from that. Folks look to foster care to, in some states you can foster to adopt. It really depends on the state. And also, you know, in some states, it's free if you adopt, you know, through the state. So there's all these different things, all these different like incentives that are out there. You know, states get extra money when they increase their rates of folks who are adopted from foster care and things like that. So there's just all this money and resources that's being funneled into family separation. And I don't understand why. Well, I do understand, because capitalism, that's why we're here today. But I just wish that it was different. I wish that the child welfare industry was actually about the welfare of the child, because at this present day and moment, it is not.
I would like to see us have a comprehensive conversation about children as chattel slaves, right? The ways in which children do not have any rights whatsoever and are simply chattel, and they're chattel that are for sale. So they can just be moved from household to household, erased and remade, especially in the context of Black adoptees and chattel slavery. I think there's really a big need for us to have that conversation in the ways in which we're perpetuating those traditions.
Thank you, Noel. Being that this is Black History Month that we're still in, that was one of the things that I was wondering about. In one podcast, you used the analogy of a dog, and that really resonated with me. You know which one I'm talking about. Can you talk about that?
So I think there were like two instances. I think Tasha talked about, I think if you get a dog and then like you start to, or I can't remember, but basically, you know, when dogs are puppies, there's a certain number of weeks that they have to wait before they can be like separated or given to somebody else. You can't just like take the dog immediately after birth, or it's not advised, at least. But when it comes to adoption, a child can come out of their mother's womb and immediately be handed off to somebody else. And I just, why do we have more care for animals? Why do they have more rights than human beings? And then also just with like names and stuff when it comes to like identity, because a lot of adoptive parents change their children's names. And so like I feel like it would be weird if you got a dog from somebody else and, you know, you call it something else after they've had it or whatever. And I know people do it, but you know, it's kind of strange that if you've been called this for 3 or 4 years and then, no, I'm just going to change your name to this, and you're just supposed to accept it, and it's supposed to be like that, that's what it is. I find it very odd.
And that is kind of what Dr. Noel was talking about with being in chattel slavery, where you just got your name changed and your identity was erased and your culture and your history and everything was erased. And then you were supposed to be that blank slate that your adoptive parents could write on. Exactly. And that really resonated with me because when I was a kid, I used to cry when I would see people separate dogs like from their puppies. And I didn't know why at the time, you know, at that age of 5, 6, 7. And it was about adoption. It was all about adoption. And that said, you still do. I got a puppy. I was talking to you all about it before we started, and he's a year old. And it did, when I got him, he could sit in my hand, and it did affect me, because here I am, a grown woman, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's not with his mom anymore. So it's amazing what adoption does for us. Yeah, Annette wrote such a huge identity erase. And Peter wrote trafficking. That it is trafficking, especially when you have rehoming. Yeah, that's a horrible thing, because that's what people do with dogs. When they don't want a dog anymore, they rehome them. Exactly. Oh, we have another question. History of adoption and Black adoptees. As that has changed somewhat over the years, has the adoptee community accommodated the change? Like, do the issues that drive predominantly white adoptees drive Black adoptees and vice versa? And what are those issues?
Could you read the question again, Erica?
Yeah, I'm trying to interpret it. Give me 1 second. Let's see. Has the adoptee community accommodated the change? Oh, okay. I'm thinking that it's more like you know, we were talking about earlier how in the Black community generally we just went to an auntie or cousin or somebody, right? Has there been have you noticed a change in like in the last 20 years, maybe 10 to 20 years, that there are more Black people adopting? Have you noticed that change, or do we still see people taking in family when they need to? But you also have a lot more people who are keeping their children too.
I still see a lot in the Black community holding on to their kin. They're still taking their grandchildren and their aunts, and are taking the babies, and so that kin raising of kin is still very prevalent in the Black community. I also see a lot of queer couples of color adopting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I see the biggest shift, is queer couples adopting children of color.
I have to agree. I'm seeing a mix as well. I see keeping within the family, as long as it's, you know, just maybe 1 or 2. What I see a lot, so in my community, is when there are several children in the family, that some of them are being put up for foster care or for adoption. And the reason being just simply saying the family is just too spread thin. We've already taken in 2 of the kids, can't take any more. And definitely hate to see that, because then you're separating. So I have a friend right now that's actually trying to get a cousin out of foster care. She's 5 years old in California, and she's fighting to get that relative back. And I also have queer friends as well who are African American looking to adopt. So it's a mixture of things. I don't see any slowing down of the industry anytime soon, because there's just more, in some aspects, there's a greater interest for it now.
Mhm. Why do you think that is?
I think it's more accepted. I think years ago it was more hush hush about adoption. And I think people are more open to it. People become influencers. They get kids just to go on TikTok or YouTube or whatever. It's more accepted these days.
That's true.
What I see.
There's a question. It says Tasha said she spoke with someone that was looking to adopt. What is some advice that you give to people you know that want to adopt? And this, I guess, it somewhat goes to the queer couple that wants to adopt.
I recommended our podcast. Seriously, this is a very close. I've known her since third or fourth grade. And then one of her friends, we all grew up in Anchorage, Alaska together. So I recommend the podcast, and I said this is going to be very real, and it's helping to prepare themselves for what could happen. Before, they were just told a rosy story. You go get a child and it's beautiful and it's great. So now they're hearing this side. I didn't open up like this to them until more recently, but hearing this side, they're like, okay, knowing what could come, preparing themselves for what could come, and knowing that, you know, you can get someone who was deeply affected by being adopted.
Mhm. So we were talking about more queer couples, and hopefully that will continue if legislation does not change in some of these states are adopting. So one person that I grew up with is Black, and she was a foster mom to 3 little white boys, and they want to be adopted. And she's looking at adopting them. And she is catching hell from people who are saying, you can't adopt white children. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I think it's no more or less, bizarre than white people adopting Black children. I think it's no more or less bizarre than people adopting other people. So for me, adoption is adoption.
I would have to agree with that 100%.
She's continuing on with the adoption, and they call her mama. That's the only mama that they've known. So yeah, it is interesting. It is interesting. I'm just looking at Peter as Australian Aboriginal and involved in the Aboriginal community here. Yeah, and that is a whole nother thing that we could talk about at another time, about how identities were stripped away from Indigenous people. Definitely. What about guardianship over adoption? So changing names and sealing records can be prevented if a child needs a family. What do you think about just guardianship?
I think guardian. Oh, go ahead, Leah. This is your thing. No, this is your thing. Go ahead.
I am a big believer in guardianship because it doesn't strip the child of their identity, and there's also the potential that it's not permanent. Adoption is permanent. All ties and everything is severed, but with guardianship, there's a potential that they could still be reunified with their family, and like you don't have to change their name and like things like that. There's still a lot of, I guess, like rights that the child is afforded versus like adoption. I mean, it's ownership at that point, and it would have to be a termination of parental rights to do anything. So I think guardianship is like a more viable, a better option as opposed to adoption. I think it's I guess an ethical option. I don't think adoption is ethical, but I think that guardianship is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then what about having all of the names on the birth certificate? What do you think about that?
A birth certificate is for like the people who like created you. So I just I just don't understand like why it gets changed to adoptive parents. If anybody else did that, it would be a crime. So it's a birth certificate. Like, I don't get it.
Well, to my knowledge, and Greg, you're the lawyer, is that the only legal document that you can actually lie on and change?
Well, it's legalized. Yeah, it's legalized forgery. And in fact, there's a statute in Ohio that says if you need to change the signature that appears on the birth record, you're certainly free to do that and to make it look like it's real. And that's what it says. And so, they have a forgery department in their vital records division in Ohio, which is it's just crazy. But yeah, just the whole issue of having all the names on a birth certificate, I cringe at that. Yeah, I can't imagine handing it in wherever you have to hand in a birth certificate, and then you get all these questions like, who's this person, who's that person? I don't think we want that. I don't know, some people do. Some adoptees I know have wanted to do that, but not me. We can take go ahead.
Go ahead, Greg.
We can take questions from anyone, not just in chat now, but if you want to raise your hand and say something. And I have a question, and that is, what, I know you just finished your first season. I'm assuming there's going to be a second season, and what are you thinking about, if you even have thought about it at this point? What did you not, are there things that you wanted to get to that you didn't in this first season?
Yeah, so we're still going with the season. We're gonna take a break soon, not sure exactly when. We're still in the season. We're still figuring out like what else we want to talk about. We definitely want to start integrating guests onto our show. So we're looking forward to that. And let's see, our next 2 episodes are about mental health and adoption, and adoptees as parents. So that's what our next ones will be about.
Can you give us a little sneak peek about the adoptees as parents? Just a little snippet.
I can. So we're recording this tomorrow. Our next episode that's coming out is about identity, and then the following 2 episodes for March, that's what they'll be about. But it'll essentially be interview style. I'm not a parent, but Tasha and Noelle are. So I'll be asking them some questions and just learning more about their experience and what it's like to parent as an adoptee, and how that may be different, or how it's impacted like their parenting style and things like that. So looking forward to it, looking forward to learning. So
that's great. Mary Rose said adoptees as parents, can't wait for that one. And now you've got even more people. This is great.
So do you all record 2 or 3 episodes at once every Friday? I think that's what or every other Friday?
Yeah, just the event that something comes up and we are not able to record, we already have something ready to go.
Yeah. And are you struggling at all to find the content, or is it just coming right to you? And I think that's what's so great about your show, right, is that you've got 3 of you. And so there's going to be conversation, and the conversation is very different, and they have different opinions, and you're just talking, but it's really informative. So I imagine when you get together, you don't have anything scripted, I assume. You just have sort of a topic.
Yeah, we literally just have a topic and we just roll with it. And that's kind of like what I envisioned and what I wanted. I wanted it to be more casual conversation. I wanted it to be real. Like, I didn't want it to be this sort of like scripted thing. Like, yeah, none of it. We pick a topic and then we just kind of get into it and wrap it up when we feel like it's a good stopping point. So it's all very like organic and free flowing. And I enjoy it that way. And we've gotten a lot of feedback that people really enjoy the conversational style. So we're going to continue with that.
And I think it's kind of easy this way. We as adoptees, we live this every day. Like, I try to turn it off and you can't. So for me, it's not really a challenge just to meet together, have a topic and say, let's go. Some days there might be some topics I want to dwell on just a little bit, just to make sure I'm not just rambling, but outside of that, no, we definitely keep it unscripted. So it's pretty raw. And, some things that I have learned about doing it that way is I'll go back and listen to, oh, I wish I would have said this. Oh, I wish I would have added that. But, we're in the heat of the moment. We're speaking from our hearts and our souls. And I love this. And I look forward to many, many more episodes.
I am always reminded that we're doing this work in the tradition of Black activists, Black feminists in particular. Bell Hooks talks about consciousness raising groups and consciousness raising circles. And I think we're very much in that tradition in doing this work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you all consider yourselves activists in the work that you're doing with this podcast. And it sounds like you do. Yeah.
Did I read abolition? Did I read abolitionist? I thought so. We're freeing the minds and the spirits of all these adoptees. You are really helping. People are writing in the comments. Are y'all inside my brain? I love that. I love it. That's why when we hear you on the podcast, and my guilty pleasure is TikTok. So I have listened to hey y'all so many, I can't even begin to tell you how many times. And I feel like you're in my brain. And I think a lot of people on this call feel that way. Adoption is trauma. Somebody said, also, every time you say adoption is trauma, I stand up and applaud. And I agree. I think it's because for so long, it was that whole, be grateful, you're so fortunate, all of that. And people didn't talk about the trauma. And I love the fact that you all are unapologetic, unafraid to talk about what's real and what's true to most adoptees. I can't say, now people say not all adoptees, but to most adoptees. So
I would just like to state for the record that I am afraid. I have a lot of fear. We've talked about this in our recording sessions. I have a lot of fear, but I am willing to step in front of that fear and do this work with Tasha and Leah. But there is a lot of fear. There's fear of loss. There's fear of retribution. So
thank you for sharing that. I'll just tell you, it's acknowledging your fear. When we hear your voices, it's loud and strong, and it's encouraging, and it helps. And I can say for me, and I'm hoping that some of you out here have felt this too, if you've listened to their podcast, that it gives me strength to keep on talking about my story and to be, very, very unapologetic about it and angry. It's like I have permission now to be angry. I've been angry, but it's great to hear that there are other people who are angry. So thank you for pushing through that fear and everything that you're feeling, because you're really making a difference for a lot of people. So really, really appreciate it. Anyone have any other questions? I have one. Would you ever like to come back and talk with us again?
Absolutely.
You all like that?
Yeah, we'd love to.
Great.
Absolutely.
That'll be great. How about all of you who are listening? Can I get nod, thumbs up? Yeah. Okay.
That's awesome.
Greg, let's make that happen.
Yeah, and I think we should trade off, have you on our podcast, and one of us will be on yours. Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah.
I have a question. It's like, it's kind of a dumb question, but it may lead to discussion. But do you ever, among the three of you, what do you disagree about? It could be like, I don't call them malts, I call them shakes. I mean,
we've had one strong disagreement. Is it okay if I tell on us a little bit?
Have at it.
So around the holidays, around Thanksgiving in particular, I really had a strong stance on not doing holidays or a conversation about holidays. At that time, we're going to do a conversation about holidays later, I think in May, because I really wanted to be respectful of the Native perspective around Thanksgiving. And I didn't want anyone to mistakenly think that we were advocating for Thanksgiving in any particular way. And we handle our disagreements well, I think. We have really good conversations that rarely come to disagreement, but that was our one real disagreement so far. That everything else we've kind of worked out in the moment.
And I would say that was growth for us, because at first we were doing it via text and that wasn't working. So we called a meeting, we talked through it, and then we realized it wasn't about Thanksgiving itself. It was more so recognizing that being adoptees, sometimes we struggle around certain holidays that we do celebrate. And so, like, whatever your holiday is, you know, I'm always thinking, what are my bio family doing? Are they celebrating? Are they together? So it's kind of just to help us through that. But via text, it wasn't working. So us coming together and talking things through was a moment of growth for the three of us. And I'm proud that we got past it and through it. And disagreements will happen, but we are trying to find ways to work through those. Lee did a great job of putting an agenda together where we talked about what would happen if we disagree on topics and what does that look like? Does somebody sit out? And we all agreed that we want to all be included with the topic. So if that ever happens, we'll find ways to navigate around that. Maybe someone's an interviewer and not an active participant. You know, we'll figure it out. But we want to keep the three of us together as much as possible when it comes to discussing topics.
And then Monica, you have your hand up, but I think maybe that was, do you have a question or comment? No. Okay. All right. Hi. I just want to say hi. I know Monica. So.
Hi, Greg. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Monica. It's good to see you.
You also. And it's been very interesting, by the way.
Monica, can you tell a little bit about yourself? I mean, people may, if you're comfortable.
Yes. My name is Monica Ross, and I'm an intercountry adoptee. I was born in Germany in 1956. I came to the United States through and biological, adopted, but they were the only parents I knew. And my father was in the Army. My mother was a maid to Dr. Franklin Phillips. When my father retired out of the Army, he was a truck driver for W.L. Reynolds. At 63, I find out I'm not a legal citizen. I'm thinking I am. I do everything everybody else does. I was raised that way. I had family like everyone else, did everything. But I got my bubble busted when I went to DMV trying to get my license renewed after driving 32 years in Baltimore City. And it's been a mind blower since 2018, retired from the government, served military, very short and brief, but got an honorable discharge. So my story is somewhat real crazy, and neither parent is here to verify anything. I had to go through hell and high water to get all my documents because I don't speak German. I've been here for 60 years. And that's my story in short.
Thanks, Monica. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have any questions for Noelle, Tasha, or Leah?
Hey, Craig. This is Chester. I had a question.
There you are.
Yeah.
Hey,
I had
Chester.
a question in terms of the agreement. I understand that the three of you want to be in agreement on the topic, but is it necessary that your opinions agree as well?
No, not at all. We have three totally different experiences with our adoption process. And I have yet to meet one person with the same adoption story. So no, we can have a topic and we can disagree, and that's fine. So that'd make for a good episode, giving different opinions and things of that nature. So.
And one more quick one. I was wondering if you guys had any surprises from through this process. Any things that have come up that you didn't anticipate?
I'm a lot angrier than I thought I was. I'm a lot angrier than I thought I was.
Interesting.
Our last recording, Leah shared some things that were really deep and very upsetting. And I literally left our recording session rage filled. Like I'm just very, very angry. Mostly I am angry that my biological family did not find a way to keep me in the family. But I have a lot of anger that I keep inside.
That's interesting. I imagine you three all healing together, and to hear that that's a, you know, maybe that's part of it as well, actually. Annette, did you have a question?
Maybe, but maybe kind of not. I have been lucky enough to kind of witness Leah's story and her go through this. If she's okay with me saying that, I've almost cried like 4 times because I'm so proud of her and all that she's done. And her going through and finding her birth family and the way that she has kind of processed through that has made my own journey look a little different. And again, I love it. Somebody had said that their adoption story, they haven't heard anything like it. I haven't heard anything like mine either. And so I think it's just interesting that I didn't realize how strong of a group this could actually be, adoptees coming together and actually accepting the fact that even though I was adopted within my family, I'm still adopted, and how much that actually has impacted my relationships with my non-existent relationships with my older siblings, and watching my 2 younger brothers go through that in their own way as well. But not really a question, but just so thankful that I've been a part of someone's life who has, whether she realized it or not, has really impacted me and my own story and how I go through things and look at things myself. So it's more of a thank you and more of wanting to brag about how great my friend is.
Thank you, Annette.
I love that. That's great.
Peter?
Hi, hey, how you doing?
Hi.
G'day. Yeah, Yama. Buongiorno.
You have a question?
Just an observation. Yeah, this has been great. I think this is my first time in this room, not in others, but yeah, it's always good being in a room with people with shared experience. And just picking up on I think what you said about being angry. I often you get this angry adoptee, you know, and I've got every right to be angry. And I had this discussion with previous secretary of Adoptee Rights Australia, and she said, "I'm not angry, I'm outraged." And I think we should all be outraged. That's my take on it.
You got a lot of head nods on that one. A lot.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I'm very interested in listening to your podcast, so I'll definitely check it out. And, I do a lot of driving, as you can see. I'm in a vehicle at the moment. I do a lot of driving, and I listen to podcasts as I drive. It makes the time go quick.
I think you have 10 now to listen to. Is it up to 10? Is it? Somewhere
I'll be playing
around there.
catch up then.
They're. By the way, I really like the length of them too. Although I don't think they're always the same length. Right?
Yeah, we usually like try not to go like over like 30 minutes. We usually try to stay like somewhere between 30 and like 40 minutes.
And it's not because I'm getting sick of hearing from you. It's just like it's a nice link of, because an hour one you have to invest in that, but a half hour you really do get something out of it. And Yeah.
I like the half hour, but then generally when they start to, I can tell they're winding down. I still wish there was more, you know, because
That's a
I
good
like-
thing.
yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any other questions? Fortunately, now we know this is not the last time that we're going to all be together.
Well, I want to thank Erica for hosting, and Leah and Tasha and Noelle for being so open and discussing your lives and this work and this activism that you're doing. And immediately when I saw your podcast and that you're putting it together and started listening to it, I was just hooked. So, you know, part of this is to get you out there to promote what you're doing, because I think it's fantastic. And you have great perspective, and the voices that you each have is really resonating with a lot of people, I think. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for being with us. Greg sent me the podcast and then I was hooked, and now I think we have lots of other people now who are hooked, right? So
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
You know, it's interesting in the beginning when you said you were all nervous, and I just would never expect you all to be nervous.
And my heart was like,
What were you thinking? I mean, what was, but like, if you go through your head, what were you think? Oh no, I'm gonna say something dumb, or it's
just
like
breathe.
Yeah.
I'm just
It's okay,
incredible.
it's a safe place, you know.
You're what?
Telling myself it's a safe place just to breathe through.
Oh,
I just get
yeah,
really
yeah.
nervous. My palm, just, you know.
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was thinking too. This is a very safe place for you all. This is conversation that is healing for a lot of us. And it's always good to talk with people and to hear your podcast and to hear that other people feel and think like we do. So yeah, we're really looking forward to you coming back, having more conversations. And again, we just thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
then if Leah, Tasha, CS, Erica, and Noelle hang on, we'll have a just real quick conversation.
Absolutely.
you,
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
See you all again soon.